So Michael Popok, Legal AF, Attorney General Merrick Garland did not have to release the Robert Hur Special Counsel report in any form or format, including his gratuitous attacks on Joe Biden, his mental capacities, and otherwise. That's another mistake by Merrick Garland. Look, I've been very supportive of Merrick Garland overall in his appointment of the Special Counsel Jack Smith. I thought it came too late in the game, should have been 6 months earlier. But at the end, I thought it was a proper exercise of his discretion. I think Merrick Garland overall is making sober decisions, but I think he screwed up here. Let me just call it for what it is. Merrick Garland, under the Special Counsel rules and the Department of Justice guidelines, did not have to release the Hur report to the public, especially since Robert Hur concluded that there be no charges brought against Joe Biden. There's 345 pages of detail in there, and under the prevailing statute that regulates the special counsel position, his appointment, his jurisdiction, and the report that he gets to issue, nowhere in there is there an obligation for the Attorney General to turn any aspect of that report over to the public or to the House Oversight Committee or Judiciary Committee. It's all a confidential report to the Attorney General, who makes a decision which part of it, if any, gets released. Not only did Merrick Garland make an error in judgment once he saw the report to release it to the public and ultimately to the MAGA extreme on the House, but he didn't do his job, I'm sorry, I'm calling it for what it is, in editing out aspects of the report that had no place in the report once the prosecutor concluded that there was not sufficient evidence to support a conviction beyond the reasonable doubt of the criminal statutes related to the handling of classified material. There's no other way to put this. The takeaway when you're hearing some of this in the news, which is why I wanted to bring it to our audience here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF, right to them. But by listening to all the talking heads and everybody out there, you might think a couple of things which are wrong because of the way it's being presented. One, there is no requirement at all in the prevailing statutes and the Code of Federal Regulation, which governs here, that requires the release, unedited or otherwise, or in any format, of the special counsel report, no matter who it is and on what subject matter. That is a decision that's made by the Attorney General. One of the commentators that used to be a senior official at the Department of Justice trying to defend Robert Hur came out and said he had to do a detailed report. He had no choice about justifying his decision to declination of prosecution. That may be true, but Merrick Garland should have only gotten that confidential report under the Code of Federal Regulation. And having seen it in draft, because he could have asked for it in draft, he could have taken his red pen or whatever color pen and edited out those things that are a violation of Department of Justice guidelines and a long-standing tradition not to insert itself in politics. Look, Robert Hur, after he concluded, this should have been a 5-page report, not a 345-page report. After he made the decision that based on the weight of the evidence that was evaluated, all of the extenuating factors, all of the cooperation by the Biden administration, by Joe Biden himself in interviews, all of the people around him, the fact that Joe Biden didn't try to stop any of his aides or people in the executive branch, didn't try to assert executive privilege, didn't try to stop in a lawsuit or otherwise the investigation, turned over all of his documents, turned over audio tapes of his interviews with a ghostwriter that he was using for 2 memoirs, turned over all the notebooks and diaries that he kept for his time as vice president. This level of cooperation and the fact of how some of this material that turned out to be confidential was stored indicated to any thinking prosecutor that there was no crime here that was committed. Sure, Joe Biden wanted to keep some of his diaries and some of his notebooks in order to assist him in some of his chapters of his memoirs. Ronald Reagan did the exact same thing. And ever since then, and most presidents too, taking home copious notes and diaries, nobody's ever been prosecuted for it. That's not why Donald Trump is being prosecuted. He's not being prosecuted because he took home his personal notes. He's being prosecuted for obstructing justice and not cooperating appropriately with any level of government or any branch. from the National Archive to the Department of Justice to the FBI to magistrate judges to federal judges to the grand jury, or any of it. And he lied to his own lawyers and lied to his staff and hid documents and boxes of documents from every level of government to which he was required to respond. That's Donald Trump. My beef is with Merrick Garland. Now, look, as I've said, I've defended Merrick Garland at length on Legal AF. I think at balance, having somebody that's mature and apolitical, or tries to be, at the helm is better for our country. But enough is enough. He appointed a Republican former Department of Justice member who'd been a U.S. attorney in Maryland, Robert Hur. Sure, his credentials were solid, but I don't think he had to bend over backwards. First of all, I question the premise of him Merrick Garland, appointing a special counsel. I'm going to read the rules in a minute to you. He did not have to appoint that special counsel. He certainly didn't have to appoint a special counsel from the other party. He didn't have to appoint the special counsel from the other party and then do a very light review or supervision of his work. He didn't have to allow that 345 pages to be produced without his input or editing or comments to it. And he didn't have to produce the whole 345 pages at all to the public and let it be publicly presented. So it's not just one misstep, it's a series of missteps by Merrick Garland that has now put us in this current position. Now, I'm not trying to cover for Joe Biden. I think that these comments and statements in there were mean-spirited, they were sarcastic, they were patronizing. I mean, he was interviewing the President of the United States in the middle of effectively a war, at least a proxy war, going on in the Middle East, days into it, about events that happened 5, 10, and 15 years ago. I mean, I defy Robert Hur, who's been a U.S. attorney and a person in private practice, if I were to grill him on how he handled a piece of paper within a file of one of his clients 10 years ago, that he handled for a period of time. I defy him to tell me with acute accuracy everything that happened to every scrap of paper related to that file. He might point to staff and say, I had a paralegal, I had an assistant, I had a secretary, I had a law clerk, I had an associate, I had a partner, and we should talk to all of them. But for him to come in here thinking that the President of the United States, about a period of time when his son died, and the maelstrom that created emotionally and otherwise, which often has impact on memory, as we know, and start grilling him about pieces and scraps of paper from 5, 10, and 15 years ago, and then declare that he is mentally feeble or has mental capacity problems and recall problems, is beyond the pale. And Merrick Garland should have put him on his carpet in his office and challenged those insertions into the brief, those intentional inclusions, and called them out for what they were. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Using silver-infused fabrics originally inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo LegalAF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you're not 100% satisfied, satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code legalaf to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40%. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. We've already had dress rehearsals for this event. And Robert Hur was involved with one of them. He was on the team with the Mueller report. He knows that Robert Mueller didn't go far enough in his reporting and the impact that that had. And he knows that FBI Director Comey stood in front of a microphone in October or late October before the Clinton-Trump campaign was over and basically indicted Hillary Clinton about her emails to the American public right before they were about to vote. So the reporting is that Robert Hur expected, his close confidant say he expected blowback. Well, right. And if if we take it, the thought experiment that Merrick Garland told Robert Hur at the beginning of his process, I'm going to release your entire report. I have the right not to do it. I have the right to keep it confidential, but I'm going to release the entire report. Then you have an obligation to be more responsible with your words. Now you have MAGA running away with the story and claiming that the 25th Amendment should be invoked by Merrick Garland, who's the Attorney General and a cabinet member, to seek the removal of Joe Biden because he's a mental incompetent. That's how far. What did Robert Hur and Merrick Garland think was going to happen? And this story is not over. And I don't mean it from a political sense for the campaign of Joe Biden. I mean it's not over because now the Oversight and Judiciary Committee particularly, led by a non-lawyer effectively, Jim Jordan, is going to call Robert Hur and Merrick Garland onto their carpet in front of a bank of microphones and start grilling them about the details of a 345-page report that never should have been released, not in the format that it was. Look, I've spoken to people at the highest levels of power who used to be either in the Department of Justice or federal judges, and they've all come away with the same conclusion. It should have been a 5-page report that stopped making any observations after they concluded that there was no evidence to bring criminal charges against Joe Biden for his handling of the classified documents. Full stop. It should not have been a soap opera with multiple chapters talking about, well, let's segregate this box of documents. Let's talk about this. This is why it went 315 pages. It went 315 pages because he had to do a chapter for like every box that he found that had a classified document in it from 10 or 15 years ago. And then he had to get into, the trauma of Beau Biden dying, who Joe Biden was probably his favorite child. I'll say it, he won't. And the impact on Joe Biden's mental health or his memory at that moment. That's unfair. And it's unfair to comment about Joe Biden, who's a little bit distracted, Mr. Hur, as a proxy war is going on in the Middle East, as you do an interview about a document from 15 years ago. But again, I'm laying the blame at Merrick Garland's fate. You might too, after you hear some of the Code of Federal Regulations I'm going to read to you that were in play, and you'll be scratching your head and going, why, oh, why did Merrick Garland bend over backwards to help the opposition? Let me put it this way. The Republicans never would have done this. Donald Trump would have burned the Department of Justice to the ground before that report got out. He would have fired every member of the Department of Justice, and he would have appointed, multiple attorney generals, acting attorney generals to avoid it. So let me just give you what I'm talking about. The Code of Federal Regulation particularly talks about the appointment of the special counsel. And it says it should only be appointed under certain circumstances. And I would argue that there weren't these circumstances present, is that the Attorney General has to deem that it would be appropriate because it would be appropriate to appoint a special counsel because of the extraordinary circumstances and the appearance of a conflict. I don't see either here, other than Merrick Garland had just appointed one for Jack Smith being appointed for Donald Trump. Other than that, unless you want to kind of have like a makeup call and say, well, all right, I'll do one for Biden too. Special counsels, independent counsels, are supposed to be an extraordinary appointment. We're not supposed to have one 2 a year and for every circumstance. The Department of Justice is more than capable of doing its own investigation concerning this matter and concluding that there was nothing there. And they're doing so without generating a 345-page report that's now put itself smack dab in the middle of the political maelstrom of whether Joe Biden should be president or not. That was the purpose of the report. So I have a lot of feelings here about the regulations that were, I think, misapplied by the Attorney General. And again, the Code of Federal Regulation that deals with this section, which is Title 28, Part 600, you can look it up, says that a confidential report goes from the special counsel at the conclusion of his work to the Attorney General. It says nothing and does not require the public publishing of this document. So again, Merrick Garland, I didn't agree with you on the appointment of Mr. Hur. I think you picked the wrong person for the job. I think you abdicated your responsibility to review his report for the good of the Republic and to make sure it didn't violate Department of Justice guidelines and precedent about things that should be included in such a report. And Robert Hur, you violated your oath because you knew this report was going to be public and that Merrick Garland apparently had said he's going to publish everything, and you threw in the kitchen sink and more about Joe Biden, including things that have no place in a prosecutorial memo, and especially a memo that's going to be one of declination, declining to prosecute. All right, and if Merrick Garland read it, which he's supposed to read the report before it's published, and he found exception and took exception to any aspect of it, including the sections calling the President of the United States as having, mental capacity problems and memory problems, then he should have called it out and objected to it, which he has the power to do under the Special Counsel law. It's chapping my backside that people are not looking at the Special Counsel law and properly mapping it on to the facts here. And Merrick Garland has no one to blame but Merrick Garland. He should never have turned this over to a special counsel. He should never have picked one that was from the opposite party, right? He was bending over backwards to be, I guess, nonpartisan. But now where are you? This exact opposite has happened. You should have done your job, Merrick Garland. You should have reviewed at least the report and had edits to it before it was published. And who told you to publish the whole thing? That's not the good of the Republic, especially in the format that the report was delivered by Robert Hur in his office. So now we're going to have to continue to talk about this on hot takes like this one, on Legal AF, on the MeidasTouch network, because this story's got legs. It's not done. The next thing is Robert Hur in the remainder of February or March is going to be called before the House Judiciary Committee, because Donald Trump wants that to happen, of course. And then you're going to have, the Elise Stefanik's and people on the committee and everybody attacking Joe Biden, asking, get ready. I want to prepare my audience and our audience for this. Get ready for the questions and the news cycle about whether the 25th Amendment to remove an incapacitated president should be exercised, and Merrick Garland, as a cabinet member, should have invoked it in order to remove Joe Biden based on the representations in the Hur Report. It's coming. And Merrick Garland, I'm speaking to him now. Meet me at camera 2. I only have one camera. You better be prepared, and better prepared than you were for how you handle this process, with how you're going to handle the congressional questions. Because you're now on the hot seat with the American public to justify it. I assume you're not going to say that you think the 25th Amendment should have been invoked. I assume you're not going to agree with Mr. Hur, having interacted with the president. I'm sure you're not going to agree that your boss is a mental incompetent or has memory problems that would make him unfit for office. I assume that's the case. Well, get ready for the questions that are going to be generated by your series of decisions that led to the publishing of this report. And we're going to hold you accountable here on Legal AF and on the MeidasTouch network. Follow me on Legal AF every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for our long format podcast at the intersection of law, politics, and justice. The title means exactly what you think. And if you like what I'm doing here, you'll love our podcast. And then you can pick it up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. So give me a thumbs up if you enjoy this commentary. And you can comment with me, put something in the chats and all. I've been known to reach back out and we can have a dialogue, which is what this network is all about. We don't blow smoke or sunshine, obviously. Until my next Legal AF, until my next hot take, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.